Okay, everybody, we are live on YouTube and live on Zoom.
Yeah, I still got 5:59. Okay, it's 6 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get started. We'll start with reading a statement. Pursuant to Governor DeSantis Executive Order number 20-112, which extends.
Can I interrupt really quickly? Can everybody mute their microphones because we're getting feedback unless the person who's talking? Thank you.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay now? Okay, pursuant to Governor DeSantis Executive Order number 20-112, which extends the Executive Order 20-69, municipalities may continue to conduct meetings of their governing boards without having a quorum of its members physically present in a specific location, and they may utilize communications media technology or CMT to conduct the meeting for public attendance and presentations at the meeting. On April 6, 2020, the City of Jacksonville Beach City Council further approved at their public meeting the use of CMT and alternate start times to conduct their council meetings and briefings. Accordingly, the City Council meeting is being held in a modified manner. We're using CMT pursuant to the Governor's executive orders to conduct city business and to protect the public, council, staff's health, safety, and welfare. Additionally, pursuant to the Governor's orders prohibiting large gatherings and requiring social distancing, the local emergency orders for the closure of government buildings, the public is not physically present at City Hall tonight. In a moment, the city attorney will explain the CMT procedures and the adaptations for the public attendance and for public comment that have been put into place and are being utilized. The city council members and the city personnel are appearing through CRT, and the meeting will be open first with an invocation by Mr. Vogelsang.
Thank you, Mayor. Bow our heads. Dear Lord, please be with us tonight as we make decisions for the betterment of our community. Please bless those that serve our country, both here and abroad, and be with our first responders who are out there every day, ensuring that we are safe. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And at this time, we'll do the pledge. If you would, stand face the nearest flag. That might be down the street. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Attorney, if you would, at this time, please state the CMT procedures and adaptations being utilized tonight.
Mayor, the city provided the following CMT options and instructions in its notices to the public and published online at the city's website in order for the public to be aware and notified of how to attend, participate, view, and listen to the city council meeting tonight. The public was advised that they could view and listen to the council meeting via live stream by visiting the City of Jacksonville Beach YouTube channel, and also via Zoom technology, which is a free application software program that the citizens could use. And the public was also advised that they could listen to the meeting via phone, and we provided the phone number and the webinar ID call-in number and provided instructions for them to follow in order to be able to listen via phone. We also notified the public of the with respect to the hearing or the speech impaired and the access, providing them with the Florida Relay Service number with respect to the TDD or the voice phone numbers. The notifications also provided that the public can submit questions and comments concerning any scheduled agenda item or for the courtesy of the floor portion of the agenda. Public was allowed to provide written comments by emailing the city clerk at the clerk's email address, which was provided. Also, they could submit hard copy via US mail to the city clerk, and we provided the clerk's mailing address. We also provided that there is a drop box at the main entrance of City Hall, and comments could be dropped off there. We just asked that submissions provided the full name, address, and if this was a city business owner, please list the business name and address as we typically would have at any of our council meetings. We also provided that a resident or a citizen could provide a submission on our City of Jacksonville Beach website, where we provided a public comment submission form. And those submissions would be read into the record at the time that action item is addressed or during the courtesy of the floor. And all of those submissions would be made public record. We notified the public that we would have the written comments distributed to the mayor and the city council members and any appropriate staff before the meeting, and that all of these different comments, however they were received, will be read into the record by the city clerk or the city attorney. I believe it's going to be the city clerk tonight, and that all of the comments will be read will be limited to 3 minutes reading time. We also provided that the public could opt to comment via dialing in or utilizing Zoom, and we provided the link to do that and requested that those persons register in advance, and that was provided in the link in our notice. We asked that they registered by noon today. We would request that those speakers would be limited to 3 minutes, and we provided instructions on how to use the Zoom technology in order to participate. The email address submission opportunity and the online comment form are remaining open during the course of the meeting, and will be read into the meeting up until 5 minutes before the particular agenda item is addressed by the mayor. And the public comments for the courtesy to the floor will be accepted up until 5 minutes before the mayor opens that portion of the meeting. So we provided, pursuant to the governor's order, multiple alternate ways for the public to attend, view, listen, and participate. And I would just like to conclude that the council members will not use any electronic devices or means of technology to communicate among themselves with respect to any of the items or discussion topics on tonight's council meeting. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. And I'm going to go ahead and Jacob, it appears that Congressman is here. Can you want to put him into the panel?
Yes,
Let's go ahead and let him speak since he's here.
Yep, he's just gonna, he's on the phone, so there'll be no video.
Okay. Sheriff, you there?
Hello. Hello, Mr. Mayor.
How are you, sir?
Hey, doing well, thank you. I hope everyone is being safe, and I thank you for this opportunity to talk a little bit about the federal response to this problem and how we're trying to help, particularly from a financial standpoint.
We're all ears, sir.
Okay, well, I think what I'd like to do, Mayor, is first I want to clarify something that happened under CARES Act 1.0. I'll call it 1.0, the original CARES Act. You know, 74% of the loans that went out were $150,000 or less, which is a good indication that it was going to small business. But as we all saw and heard in the media, you know, we had groups like Shake Shack and Ruth Chris and heck, even Harvard and the LA Lakers and, you know, all of these outlier folks who were getting loans, and people were scratching their head. And I want to give a little explanation for how that probably happened. The onus, because we want to try to get this money out as quickly as possible to the businesses because the businesses were going to pass this through to their employees. And I can't stress that enough either, Mayor, that this money is really intended for the employees. Up to 75% of it, if the business wants their loan to become a grant where they don't have to pay it back, then they have to spend a minimum of 75% of their loan on their employees' payroll. So this money, I see folks asking all the time, well, you're giving money to the businesses. What are you doing for the people? What are you doing for the individual? Well, that money that's going to the small businesses is going to the employees. And if it doesn't, it'll be a loan and they'll have to pay it back. Like these other groups that I just mentioned, the LA Lakers, Harvard, and all them. If they don't give it back willfully, they'll have to pay it back in a loan because it'll never be approved for the forgiveness. And so, which is why in the first CARES Act, we put $25 million into the Inspector General's office so that they could go back and look at these loans after they were made. But we put the onus for the application on the borrower, not on the lender. And so that's how some of this stuff got through, I think. And we did try to tighten that up in CARES Act 2.0, which 2.0 is an additional $484 billion of additional resources are going out, $310 billion just to the PPP. So that's a total of $670 billion going into the Paycheck Protection Program. The EIDL loans, that's the Economic Injury Disaster loans through SBA. We put an additional $20 billion in there. The disaster loan program itself got an additional $50 billion. And one of the things that we did, I'd like to explain too, which looks like it's really paid off. We took $60 billion in the out of the 310 and really set it aside for small lenders to lend out. And so lenders with $10 billion or less in assets got $30 billion to lend. And then those with $10 to $50 billion in assets got the additional or the final $30 billion to lend. And that looks like it's really working out because this cycle on CARES Act 2.0, the average amount of a loan, I think, is right around $79,000. So that's a good indication that the money is going where it's needed the most, and that's our small businesses who, again, have to pass through 75% of this to their employees if they want it to become a grant instead of a loan that they have to pay back. Additionally, I'd like to mention, before I just throw it open for any questions you may have, $75 billion of this went to hospitals, children's hospitals, rural hospitals. In fact, another $825 million of that actually went to community health centers, and an additional $25 billion went to testing. FDA also got an additional $22 billion for testing, and $11 billion of that, 50% of what went to FDA actually went to the state and local for testing and tracing, because that's going to be so important to opening up business moving forward. And so one of the things that I want to point out as well is the fact that in addition to the $150 billion that was set aside for state and local, we've actually sent about $700 billion to the states, including that $150 billion, which has gone for testing, for PPEs, for a lot of different categories, as you know. So when folks talk about what are the states going to get out of this, I think it's important to notice and recognize that they've already picked up of 700 billion. So, and I'll close with this in case we have any, in case the city of Jacks Beach has any outstanding FEMA matches. I've got a letter I'm sending to FEMA to ask them during this time to let's drop the 25% match on FEMA loans, and hopefully we'll hear back something on that soon that will give us some good news. But it doesn't make sense that be sending money to the states and then ask them to pay a 25% match on a FEMA loan. So hopefully on those disaster loans, we'll be able to, the states won't have to match 25%, or anybody else that's getting those disaster loans. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll throw it open for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Sheriff. I do have a couple of hands raised. I think the first was Councilwoman Sandy Golden. Sandy?
No, I'm sorry, Mayor. I just had a question before Congressman was starting to talk.
Okay.
But no, thank you. I apologize.
No worries. Ms. Hoffman?
Yes, Congressman, this is Chris Hoffman. My other hat is the Executive Director of the Beaches Museum. And you and I spoke on the phone the day that the first round, I guess 1.0, ran out of money. And I just wanted to thank you for your time on that day, first of all, but also I feel like 2.0 round was very, very different for a lot of us. We did successfully receive the PPP, and we were able to keep our 5 employees on board. And I've heard just anecdotally across the beaches a lot more success. So I feel like reserving a little bit for the smaller banks and lenders was maybe what made the difference there for a lot of us. So thank you for that. And you really had a handle on the issue, and I just really appreciated that. So I wanted to say that. But then this may be too big of a question for our time here, but what is the short-term impact on the federal budget going to be? With all of this money, billions and trillions of dollars being given away, what do we see happening with the federal budget, or what do you see happening?
Yeah, well, in fact, that's one of the reasons I'm so adamant that we get back to Washington, D.C. and get back to work. We still haven't passed the budget for this year. I mean, we haven't until the end of September, obviously, but usually this time of the year is when we are really putting that federal budget together. And I can't imagine that how tough it's going to be with these kind of deficits that we're looking at. So we have to get back up there and start doing our job. And I told the news media today that, if Publix and Winn-Dixie, if they can stay open and find a safe way to do that, I'm sure Congress can as well. And in fact, the Senate is in session. So hopefully the leadership in the House will listen and we'll get back up there and get to work on this, because I'm like you, Councilwoman. I think there's going to be some challenges for us in this going forward. We are going to have to find some ways to cover these deficits. And I thank you for the kind words on the museum. I will tell you this too. I think not only did we hear from folks like you about the smaller operations, but and so setting that money aside for those smaller lending institutions, I think really did help. But the other thing I will tell you is that I think what really hurt the first rollout was nobody was ready for the numbers of applications. I don't know how they could have been. SBA, their E-Trans system, which all of these loans had to process through, was just woefully inadequate for the numbers that started coming through. And then when they created the more robust system to actually process all of the smaller loans, or well, not just smaller loans, but all the loans, I think what you saw was a difficulty, and a lot of places had to go back and change their IT on their end to interface with the new, more robust E-Trans system. And so we had a couple things working against us in the CARES Act. One that I think we were able to fix for CARES Act 2.0, and a lot of it was because we heard from folks like you, quite frankly. So thank you for your assistance as well.
Thanks, Ms. Hoffman. Next question is Councilman Corey Nichols.
Congressman Rutherford, I just wanted to thank you for everything that you're doing in Washington, and thank you so much for everything you're doing to help our community. I think you're right on with your points about the smaller institutions needing money to distribute to smaller businesses. I know a lot of people that have gotten it in the second round that didn't get it in the first round, and they were very troubled at that time. But I just appreciate all the effort you're putting in and everything you do on a daily basis for us.
Thank you very much, Councilman. I appreciate that.
And thank you, sir. And Councilwoman Georgette Dumont.
Thank you, Mayor. Congressman, thank you for, again, just what everybody else said, making sure that it goes to the smaller banks for the unbanked businesses that were really left out of the first round. I do want to follow up on what Chris asked, though, about the implications for the federal budget. I know that you really stressed that you got to get back to work, and I understand that, but I'd like to know what your view is, the implication of all of this money going out at the federal level for our budget for the next fiscal year, please.
Well, I think it's certainly going to have an impact on our expenditures. You know, out of a $4.2 trillion budget, we have about 1.2 trillion that is not dedicated. It's discretionary, and we're going to have to look at that 1.2 very hard, 1.2 trillion very hard. I think most of that is going to have to go back into the budget to reduce our deficit. Now we've got, you know, we run on a 10-year cycle, but that's still going to be a lot of money.
Okay, it looks like that's it for the questions. Congressman, I want to thank you personally for not just being here tonight, but for all you and Jackie do for the community. And it's funny, every time I've been up to DC for the last several years and you and I've gotten a chance to get together, you make it feel like home up there. So thanks for all you do. Thanks for the way you handle your constituents and everybody that surrounds you. And we wish you Godspeed and the very best of everything. And you got a tall order ahead of you.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor. I appreciate it, and I appreciate all the assistance we get from the city of Jacksonville Beach. God bless y'all.
Thank you, sir. God bless. Okay, I'm going to go ahead. That was obviously a little bit of a deviation from the schedule. We wanted to get the congressman up right away. So at this time, I'm going to call the meeting to order. And Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Doherty. Councilmember Dumont.
Here.
Councilmember Golding.
Here.
Councilmember Hoffman.
Here.
Councilmember Nichols.
Here.
Councilmember Vogelsang.
Here.
Mayor Latham.
Here. And let's go ahead and start with agenda item 20-094, please.
I move that we approve the minutes of the regular council meeting held on April 20th, 2020.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or debate by the council? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? By your action, motion carries. 95, please.
I move that we approve the minutes of the council briefing held on April 27th, 2020.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any debate by the council? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? By your action, motion carries. Announcements. Does anybody, Ms. Hoffman?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I have two announcements. One of them is, if you haven't seen it yet, a Beaches 2.0 campaign. I've been working with a Jacksonville Beach-based marketing company called Hen House on this campaign, which the goal is to keep the community informed as beaches, small businesses start to reboot and come back online safely in our community. So this campaign will feature not just restaurants, but all small businesses at the beach, and we'll have a website available later this week. But we are up and running on social media, so I encourage you to follow and share. And the second thing I wanted to share is we've talked a lot about the BEAM CARES program. That's the Beaches Energy Charity Fund that's administered through BEAM. But there's a new campaign that just launched last week called Keep Them in Their Home. One of the main things that BEAM does is provide rent assistance to people at the beaches and in the surrounding areas. And that need has exponentially doubled or exponentially increased since we've been in this pandemic situation. So Jacksonville Councilman Rory Diamond and St. Johns County Commissioner Jeremiah Blocker, as well as several other local leaders, including myself, I think Mr. Nichols and Mayor Latham, have contributed to this fund where the goal is $50,000 specifically for rent assistance. And the campaign runs through May 15th. It is already at 60% of its goal. So I invite my colleagues to contribute to that as well. And more information can be found at jaxbeam.org. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Golding.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one announcement. This Wednesday at 7 o'clock, Beaches Watch is going to have a virtual community meeting like Beaches Watch has been doing each month. But this one will be with the, it'll be a Duval Schools update with Beaches School Board Representative Elizabeth Anderson and the Superintendent, Dr. Diana Green. And they'll be talking about the status of the schools as well as updates regarding COVID. And then they'll also be talking about the half-cent sales tax that is going to be on the ballot this November. And if anyone is interested in joining that meeting, it will be a Zoom meeting similar to this one. And they can go to the Beaches Watch website at beacheswatch.com. And under the events section, they can find the meeting there and the link to connect to the meeting. And it should be a very educational meeting.
Thank you, ma'am. Next is Ms. Dumont. Ms. Dumont.
To continue with this educational theme that we're on, I want to congratulate all of the spring 2020 UNF graduates. Swoop, all the Ospreys have flown the nest. And so I want to thank them. I want to thank their family and their friends. They did a great job. It was quite the bumpy semester, to say the least. I think that's putting it mildly, but they made it through. Congratulations, and on to bigger and better things. I believe we say soar high.
Thank you, ma'am. And anybody else have any announcements? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Is Mr. Stefopoulos, is the staff prepared to address 20097?
Yes, Jacob Board, was there any courtesy of the floor that needed to be read?
I beg your pardon. Thank you. I think is Laurie set up to read them?
Yep, the clerk's office is going to read them, and we had one person register to call in, but I do not see their number on the list of attendees. So they are not here.
Okay, Madam Clerk, could you go ahead and start reading the comments that we received?
Is she on mute?
I'm looking. Can
you hear me? Are we good?
Laurie, can you hear us okay?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Yes, ma'am. If you would please go ahead and read the comments on the floor.
I'd like to go ahead and read the name of the person that was registered. Even though she didn't call in, I want to go ahead and put her information on the record. Her name was Jennifer McKeever at 2821 Sebastian Court. And she did not leave any comments as to why she was calling in, but I do have her contact information. The next one is Ken Marsh, 2011 Gale Avenue, Jacksonville Beach. His comments are as follows. Now that the city is using Zoom technology to keep council meetings and briefings progressing forward, I was wondering if now is not the time to use the same technology with the CRA. This type of technology should be considered not only for monthly meetings, but also used to increase both the numbers of briefings with the committee or between the council and the CRA. Some of the issues that I believe are worthwhile to explore or get updates on include, number one, is the law firm that was hired to consolidate the various vision plans still on target to deliver the product when expected? If not, what is the expected and how, what is the expected date, and how will the date impact CRA from using said result to finalize a unified vision plan by year end? Second, based on current economic forecasts, what is the status for all major downtown construction projects and expected completion dates? Number three, attempt to ascertain any challenges and opportunities in our downtown should a potential down economy occur. We know from our most recent citizen vision meetings that a common concern among citizens is that we are not realizing the full capabilities of what our downtown should offer for residents. Obviously, the crystal ball is very unclear about our future economic picture, but proper downtown Jacks Beach planning is very critical, if not essential, during this period. As you know, the 2007 vision plan was completed just prior to the 2008 crash, and much was left incomplete. Hopefully, we can learn from that experience. There is no doubt that everyone within City Hall has much on their plate during the unprecedented period. I only ask that value, importance, and the priority of progressing the CRA mission be considered during this crisis period.
Was there another one?
I had a second one. Her name is Sue Ann Alleger, Alleger, 1084 16th Avenue South, Jacksonville Beach. Her complaint is in relation to the 16th Avenue South traffic and lighting nuisance complaint. On March 26, 2020, a letter was sent via email to Commissioner Nichols. That letter is attached. I had Jacob verify, but there was no letter attached, just FYI. In a follow-up phone conversation on April 20th, Mr. Nichols noted that he had contacted Chief Smith regarding the lack of traffic limit signs and traffic speed problems along the 16th Avenue South, and Director Mann of the Planning Development regarding nuisance lighting from the Baptist Beaches parking area along 16th Avenue South. Both City of Jacksonville Beach staff were to visit the area and provide information. Mr. Nichols had nothing to report on April 20th. This letter provides the second inquiry into what is going to be done to slow traffic, inform drivers of the lawful speed limit, enforce the speed limit, and mitigate for nuisance lighting from the Baptist Beaches parking lot overhead lights. The residents along 16th Avenue South request 2 to 4 15-mile-an-hour speed limit signs in both directions of 16th Avenue South between 11th Street and 9th Street. Speed trailer with radar between 10th Street South and 9th Street just before the curve to alert drivers of their traveling speed and to provide traffic count and speed data. Speed limit markings to be painted on the road surface of both travel lanes between Roberts Drive and 9th Street South at frequent intervals reflective FDOT design standard plan guidelines. Replacement or adaptation of the parking lot lights in 16th Avenue South Baptist Beaches parking lot to prevent nighttime nuisance illumination into adjacent homes. The residents and families along 16th Avenue South demand the council focus on these problems before an accident or fatality occurs. Speed kills, and we cannot ask residents to obey a law if no information exists to inform them of the law. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Does that end the comments?
That,
Mayor Latham, the person who registered to call in is, she is online now. So if it's
Okay.
okay with you, I will unmute her.
Madam Clerk, are you done?
I'm done.
Okay, go ahead, Jacob. Patch her through.
Jennifer
Hello, my
McKeever,
name-
are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Jennifer, if you would please start with your name and address for the record, please.
Yes. Hello, my name is Jennifer McKeever, and I live at 2821 Sebastian Court, Jacksonville, Florida 32224. I am a acupuncture physician and small business owner in Jacks Beach. And when I was looking around at locations to put my small business in the commercial real estate, I noticed that almost all of the buildings I was looking at did not have running hot water. I think that right now, during this unprecedented time with the COVID-19 issue that we're having, it should be mandated that all building owners put running hot water into all small businesses. The commercial real estate industry in Jacks Beach is at a premium price right now, and building owners have done very well for themselves over the past 10 years. Right now, small business owners are taking a massive hit. We are being asked to start wearing PPE, use all the safety guidelines, make sure that the public is safe, and guarantee that safety for the people who are coming into our businesses, offices, health establishments, etc. And many of us do not have running hot water. I do ask that we get building owners to put running hot water in the buildings at their cost to ensure the safety for the public and the people of Jacks Beach.
Thank you very much for your comments. We're going to go ahead and pass those along for review to the staff, and someone should reach out to you, Jennifer. Thank you very much for your call.
Thank you.
Mayor Latham, I just wanted to comment on that second one, just saying that the city and myself have been in touch with that previous person that commented, and we discussed it. We've been talked to the chief and with Bill about addressing these issues. So we are in the process of addressing them, and we have spoken to her since April 20th when she sent that information.
Okay, thanks for the update. Appreciate it. Okay, now we're going to move on. If the staff is prepared to brief 20-097, please.
Yes, Mayor, if it's okay, I'll talk about both of these issues at the same time, 20-097 and 20-098.
You bet.
Both of these items are reappointments and appointments of members of the police and firefighters pension boards. As you are aware, the city administers a pension for both of those departments. Even though the fire department is contracted out, we are still maintaining the pension associated with it. That the pension boards are liaison through the Human Resources Department, and we have HR Director Ann Muse on the line to talk a little bit about the appointments and reappointments necessary.
Okay. You want to pre-brief us, or do you want us to, does anybody have any questions? Mr. Nichols? Mr. Nichols, is that hand up from previous? Yep, okay. Anybody have any questions for the staff? Ms. Hoffman?
Would you like me to make the motions first?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Okay. You want me to do them one at a time?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am, please.
I move that we reappoint Marvin Dupree to the Police Officers Pension Board for a 2-year term expiring on March 31st, 2022.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any debate by the council?
I did have a question.
Okay,
I thought in the kind of revised procedure for the boards that we were going to have a reapplication and a re-interview for reappointments. I know that's probably tricky right now, but at least a new application I feel like would have been.
yeah, no, I would actually agree. This kind of just came up without any pre-brief notice on it. So I'd be open unless there's some kind of consideration or concern from Mr. Stefopoulos to table this and get that information first. Mike, just so we're clear, our policy in order to meet some of the concerns some of the council had about term limits was to complete a new application and interview if they're going to be reappointed. And I just don't think we coordinated this very well, kind of.
No, you're correct, Mayor. I think the last time we did board appointments, that communication was with the clerk's office. And again, with these boards reporting to Human Resources, I think we had a gap in the expectation of council. HR Director Muse, is there any issue with us pushing this back until we can have completed applications?
I don't know if you can hear me or not. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We do have a pension board that is going to be scheduled for June 2nd. We moved it out a little bit because of COVID-19. I have a little concern without the reappointments that we get a quorum on those boards. That's our largest meeting that we have during the year, where we approve our actuarial reports and our budget and the financial statements. So that would be my only concern. If there is an issue, we could perhaps move that meeting out a little bit, as long as we have that meeting prior to July 1st, we'll be within compliance of the pension ordinance. So we could possibly do that.
If it wouldn't be too inconvenient, I think that might be the best path. That way we can get the council all the information. And were you planning on holding a interview with these folks? I mean, we'd have to set that up with Jacob's help on Zoom probably.
An interview for this appointment tonight, or are you talking about an interview for future candidates?
No, I'm talking about if we move the schedule a little bit to the right to facilitate this, we should be able to have time to set up a virtual interview with these guys as well, right?
The city clerk handles that, so I'll let her address that.
Laurie, is that something we can do?
Yes, we can go ahead and make the attempt. Part of the problem we have in getting these applications is that they just don't value the application process. They feel like they've turned it in one time and they don't understand why we need to have an updated one. So we still keep after them. We still make sure that, we try to get them in. As far as setting up Zoom, it's more, at your convenience, when you're available and when the other party is also available. So
thank you.
I'll get with Jacob and we'll make the attempt.
Ms. Hoffman, you have a question?
Well, I just had a comment. I didn't mean to derail this process in particular. And since it was more of guidelines that we were trying to implement, not a statutorial requirement, I would be comfortable proceeding with these. The two, particularly for the police officers board, are relatively recent appointments. So I'm okay with moving forward with this. The June meeting is a pretty important one. So I don't want to derail it, but I also don't want to lose sight of the process, because I think we had a really good, predictable, formal process going on with our board appointments. But I don't want to hold up, especially I think we've already pushed this meeting back once. I think it would be, I support all of the reappointments as someone who serves on the pension board. I don't know if Ms. Dumont has anything to add to that, but I would support going forward with these tonight.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Dumont.
I do. I agree with Chris on all of what she said. And I am concerned that we are reappointing at this time of year, considering the June meeting is such a critical one. That is not one you want a new person on the board for. They need to get their legs under them. So if I recall, when we were going to do the appointments and the reappointments, that was supposed to be at the end of the calendar year. And we're in the middle of summer. So I don't know if this one never got moved, because with the planning commission, they shifted that. So this way everybody would be December into January, but this is a horrible time of the year to throw a new person in. But I agree, I support all of the reappointments on the board. So I agree with Chris.
Okay, Madam Clerk, you got a hand raised?
Yes, I did. We had looked at all the boards to make sure that we could get them to all end in December 31st. The board for this, or the pension board, was one of those boards that, because of the way that their terms ran, that we were not able to do the 2-year, have them extended to December 31st and had them all end on December 31st. We looked at that really closely because it's kind of an odd board, that we didn't want to have just one board out there that didn't end December 31st. And that is our only board right now that ends, as their term comes up. We can certainly revisit that. That was the last administration. It's certainly worth taking a look at. It makes things a lot easier when we all end at the same time, for a lot of reasons. But, and I'll look into why we didn't have applications for these two folks too. I'll find out and see what happened here also. But certainly, if you like, I can get with Ann and see what we can come up with.
Okay.
Thank you. It's problematic with this time of year specifically for this board.
Understood.
I agree.
Mr. Nichols?
Can we modify these to just extend these through the end of the year? And then it'll give us time to interview, go through the interview process again, and just extend the ones that we're doing today till the end of the year?
You want to make that a motion?
Can I make a comment?
Go ahead.
Yes, I'd like it.
One of the appointments in each of the boards is a ministerial appointment. That position as a 5th member is selected by the other 4 members. So those 2 appointments, I think, should happen tonight. I believe the other ones, I don't see an issue with making the appointment for 1 year, and we can revisit it.
Okay. Lori, your hand's still up. Did you have something else to add? Ms. Hoffman, did you have something else to add? Ms. Golding?
I just wanted to follow up on the discussion that was just had about ending all the terms at the same time. And I just wanted to ask the clerk, does that add any difficulty for your department because we've got all of these terms ending at the same time?
The terms right now, they're still staggered. Not everybody ends on December 31st. So I still have other members. Every board member does not end on December 31st. It's staggered. It makes it a lot easier because we were having problems where we would have terms that were ending in the middle of the year. Every month, it seemed like we were always having to go back and revisit this. And it was just like an ongoing process. Having it all end at the same time, we have the expectation, the knowledge that, mid-year, we should start doing the interviews. That way, when the term comes up, we're ready, we have people lined up. It goes back to the other process though, too, as far as getting good qualified candidates. I have 0 candidates right now for the pension board, other than the one gentleman whose application is listed in the packet. That's the only application I currently have. And we're still, working very hard at doing that.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to verify that.
Thank you. And Mr. Nichols, did you want to make a motion about the 1 out of 3?
Sure, I will make a motion to voting today to extend both subjects through the end of the year and through December 31st of this year.
And that's all 3, or are you just the one that they were talking about?
Well, I guess we're doing these separately, so I need to do them separately, right?
May I make a comment, please? One of the positions is the 5th member, which is a ministerial act by the City Council for the Pension Board. That is a reappointment of Joe Galarno. And so I would recommend that that action is taken by the City Council, and his term will expire on March 31st, 2020. That is someone who is selected by the other board members.
Is he the only one? He's the only one?
Yes, he's the only ministerial one. The other 2 appointments are Marvin Dupree and John Gastilla. Those are both existing members who would like to request to be reappointed. And the reappointment for those would be through December 31st of 2020.
Okay, so there's 2 that could be potentially impacted by Mr. Nichols' motion.
That's correct.
Okay. So just to be clear, your motion, Mr. Nichols, is to extend those 2 to the end of December?
Yes,
December 31st? Okay,
Correct.
is there a second on that motion? Going once, going twice. Okay, I'm sorry, motion dies. So we're back to the original motion, which is reappoint 3 members of the police pension board.
I made the, I'm sorry, point of order. I made the motion for Marvin Dupree specifically.
Okay. So any more discussion about Ms. Dupree? Then roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Demont,
Yes.
Councilmember Golding,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman,
Yes,
Councilmember Nichols,
yes,
Councilmember Vogelsang,
Yes.
Mayor Latham.
Yes. And go ahead, Ms. Hoffman.
I move that we reappoint John Gastilla to the Police Officers Pension Board for a 2-year term expiring on March 31st, 2020.
Second.
Got a motion and discussion, a motion and a second. Any debate by the council?
Point of order, it's 2022.
I'm sorry. What'd I say? 2022, I meant.
Amended, aye. And second is amended. Any other comments from the council or debate? Ms. Scott? Madam Clerk, you got your hand raised.
Sorry,
Oh, okay, no problem.
sorry.
Then can we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Golding,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman,
Yes,
Councilmember Nichols,
yes,
Councilmember Vogelsang,
Yes.
Councilmember Demont, Mayor Latham.
Yes. Okay, and we have one more.
I move that we reappoint as a ministerial act John Galerno to serve as the 5th member of the Police Officers Pension Board for a term expiring March 31st, 2022.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any debate by the council? Seeing no hands, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Hoffman,
Yes,
Councilmember Nichols,
yes,
Councilmember Vogelsang,
Yes.
Councilmember Demont,
Yes.
Councilmember Golding,
Yes.
Mayor Latham.
Yes, and Mayor Pro Tem Hoffman, if clarification, when you asked me if we were going to do them together or one at a time, I thought you were talking about the police versus the police.
oh,
So let's go ahead on the fire and do all 3 at one time. Or for the firemen.
okay, all the reappointments together.
Yeah.
One of them's a ministerial act. I would think we'd want to do that separately.
Well, we can do them separately. I was just trying to save a little bit of time. Go ahead.
Well, we did the discussion already, so we'll fly through these.
Okay.
I move that we reappoint Gaylord George Candler to the Firefighters Pension Board for a 2-year term expiring on March 31st, 2022.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any debate by the council? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Nichols,
yes,
Councilmember Vogelsang,
Yes.
Councilmember Demont,
Yes.
Councilmember Golding,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman,
Yes,
Mayor Latham.
Yes. And the next one?
I move that we reappoint Dennis Pavlovsky to the Firefighters Pension Board for a 2-year term expiring on March 31st, 2022.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any debate by the council? Seeing no comments, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Vogelsang,
Yes.
Councilmember Demont,
Yes.
Councilmember Golding,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman,
Yes,
Councilmember Nichols,
yes,
Mayor Latham.
Yes. And last one.
I move that we reappoint as a ministerial act Deborah White to serve as the 5th member of the Firefighters Pension Board for a term expiring March 31st, 2022.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion or debate by the council? Seeing no hands, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Demont,
Yes.
Councilmember Golding,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman,
Yes,
Councilmember Nichols,
yes,
Councilmember Vogelsang,
Yes.
Mayor Latham.
Yes. And item number 2099, staff, we prepared to brief.
Yes, this next item is authorization for the rehabilitation of the city's north water tank. The city has this project planned in the fiscal year 2021 CIP. However, the Public Works Department wants to start working on this project now so that we can actually be doing the rehabilitation early on in the fiscal year once we hit October. There are a couple photos to go along with it. We do have Public Works Director Dennis Barron, who's going to talk a little bit about what work will be included with this project. Dennis, if you'd like to take it away.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. This project involves the repainting of a tank on the north end of town, of course, with 2 logos, as well as some additional work to have to do with the cathodic protection that actually protects the tank, and as well as installing a cellular corral at the top, which is similar to what is on the south end tower, as you see in the picture. So it's a conglomeration of all kinds of different work all being done. We plan to have this work done in November/December. So therefore, we kind of have to get it approved so we can accept the bids, get them under contract, and get them ready to roll that early in the process.
Thank you, sir. Get my participant list back up. Any questions from the council? Ms. Golding.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Barron, I wanted to ask you about the fact that the tank had received overcoat painting of the entire tank in July of 2018. And apparently there was some corrosion removal done at that time. So we're looking at 2 years since that work was done. Is that expected, or how long are we expecting this overcoat painting to last?
The normal overcoating painting is significantly longer. However, I think from the 2018 project, this was more of spot repairs that were done. And if they weren't addressed at that time, they would have been or could have been catastrophic repairs when we got to the time frame of 2020/2021. So it was one of those things. It was a Band-Aid in 2018 to be able to get us to our normal schedule. The corrosive salt water really makes a huge difference in tank maintenance. I can't speak as to how long a tank can withstand in these elements. I'm not used to that answer. I know up north, we usually run 15 to 20 years between tank paintings, but I can't speak as to what we have to do on the beach due to the saltwater environment.
And we don't have any historical data with regard to what the time frame has been in the past for this type of work, because it's a pretty large expenditure, but I realize it also has the cathodic work as well, and which I guess how often would that have to be done?
That's still original. So that's been a long time since it's been done. Those are designed to be eaten up to where it attacks the cathodic protection devices and leaves the tower alone in the soils. So those haven't been done for a very long time. So it's just kind of a fluke that it has to be done at the same time. And we recommend that we're just doing it all as part of one big project. I wish I had my superintendent, Michael Taylor on. I know he's watching, but he can't get into the queue for Zoom to answer the other part of your question. I don't have that. I can provide that to you. I just don't have it.
Well, I think my biggest concern was the time frame and the fact that this was only 2 years later, but I think you've answered that question. And I guess my only comment would be that I hope that that this is something that would last much, much longer before we have to do it again.
I would hope so as well.
Okay, thank you. Was that it, Ms. Golding? Okay, Mr. Vogelsang?
Is the plan to make it look like the one down here on the south end with the logo and color?
The colors have yet to be determined. I know there's an issue me and Mr. Stefopoulos have been working through on the center part of that logo, kind of fades away in the background. It does include complete tank painting as well as logos on 2 logo applications. We'll have to make the determination on exact color, get a little closer to the time frame. Unfortunately, we've addressed to try to figure out what we can do about that center part of the logo. that kind of fades away on that color, including outlining or doing something different. And the only answer that the painting company can seem to provide is to completely change that center to be a completely different color, which it's kind of the whole logo and patent process. I don't know if we want to engage in doing that on the north or whether we just want to try to tweak the base color so that maybe that center will actually change a little different and pop a little better.
I think the south end looks great. And changing that, we had significantly more antenna on the south end than you do on the north one. So it looks 10 times better this way. So I think it's a good project and a good idea to move it up there just from aesthetics, let alone like this memo dictates is a corrosion standpoint. I think the logo looks good. I didn't have an issue really seeing it that much, but I do support this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Hoffman?
That was my question, was about the look of it. I think the logo, I mean, the look of the tower at the south end looks really good. I've heard a lot of positive comments. We never actually voted on that logo, so I don't think it would really be a problem to make an adaptation of that center color. I also wanted to say that this particular water tower is 5 doors down from me, so the quicker you get it done, the better. And then I also wanted to ask Mayor Latham if you wanted a motion on this one. We haven't done a motion yet.
Yeah, we're going to do a motion after I tell you that I was 5 blocks away from this one, and I can assure you that it's going to impact your life.
5 houses, not 5 blocks.
Okay.
It's going to be worse, but
impact your house or your life too.
It'll look a lot better. So I'll just encourage my neighbors to be patient.
There you go. And if you would please go ahead and offer the motion.
I move that we approve the rehabilitation of the north elevated water tank with tank rehab, Core Pro Waterworks, and tank engineering.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion from the council? Mr. Vogelsang and Ms. Hoffman, your hands are still up. Sorry. You guys done? Anybody else have any questions? Okay, in that case, Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Golding,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman,
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogelsang,
Yes.
Councilmember Demont,
Yes.
Mayor Latham.
Yes, and Madam Clerk, please read resolution number 2058-2020 by title only, please.
A resolution by the City of Jacksonville Beach authorizing the sale of city surplus property using Gov's Deal online auction services as allowed by Code of Ordinances Section 2-1.1E and delegate administrative responsibility for determining surplus property and resulting sales to the city manager.
Okay. Staff, are you prepared to brief us on 2020?
Yes, I'm going to turn this over to Luis Flores, our Property and Procurement Officer. But the regular disposal of surplus property is something that the City of Jacks Beach has to do on a regular basis. And this action will allow us to continue doing that into the future. With that, Luis, if you'd like to take it away.
Yes, sir. So it's Luis Flores, Property and Procurement. So what you have before you is the item that we generally bring to you twice a year for the sale of surplus items. At the last time we brought this item to you, there was some discussion and desire to possibly administratively process the function as opposed to bringing it to council every time. So what you have before you is the current request to go ahead and advertise for the surplus activity and also provide the administrative authority to the city manager to adjudicate that in future instances. And there will be a follow-up with the city manager, with the city attorney to create an ordinance.
Thank you, Luis. Does anybody have any questions from the council? Seeing none, roll call, please.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I haven't made a motion yet.
Oh, motion, I'm sorry.
I move that we adopt resolution number 2058-2020 to authorize the sale of city surplus property using the online auction services of GovDeals and to delegate to the city manager administrative responsibility for determining surplus property designations and the sales of the property.
Second.
Got a motion and a second now. Is there any other debate or discussion from the council? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Hoffman,
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogelsang,
Yes.
Councilmember Demont,
Yes.
Councilmember Golding,
Yes.
Mayor Latham.
Yes. And Madam Clerk, if you would please read ordinance number 2020-8139, first reading, public hearing by title only, please.
An ordinance amending Chapter 31, Traffic and Motor Vehicles, Article 1, in general, Section 31-5, riding bicycles on sidewalks prohibited of the City of Jacksonville Beach Code of Ordinances, changing the title, removing the prohibition of riding bicycles on public sidewalks, and adding multiple subsections that authorize or regulate or prohibit the use of certain other devices on sidewalks, providing for legislative findings, repeal conflicts, severability codification, and an effective date.
Thank you, ma'am. This ordinance is before this council for a public hearing and consideration on its first reading. I'm now going to open the public hearing to ordinance number 2020-8139. Madam Clerk, is there any public comment submitted from any parties?
Yes, sir, I do have one.
Okay. If you would read it into the record.
The comment came from Ken Marsh, 2011 Gale Avenue. It's for agenda item 20-101, ordinance number 2020-8139. On February 27, 2020, I submitted an email letter to councilpersons Golding and Dumont asking for a comprehensive review of ordinance 31-5, prohibiting the riding of bicycles on all sidewalks in Jacksonville Beach. The ordinance essentially forced cycling families onto busy and dangerous streets, such as around Jacksonville Drive, South Beach Parkway, Penman Road, to name a few. In addition, the ordinance was oftentimes not enforced by our police because it simply did not make good sense. We should not put our police department in that position. Let's provide them with the proper guidelines that make good common sense and that are also enforceable. This is a start, and I am in full support. I want to personally thank Ms. Golding and Ms. Dumont for their quick response to my email and their efforts in aligning this ordinance with overall public safety and helping us become a more bicycle and pedestrian family-friendly community. I also want to thank the city manager, city attorney, and other council members or staff that were part of pushing this agenda item so quickly, especially in light of their other work they must be facing during the virus crisis. As an avid cyclist, I am deeply saddened that Florida remains the state with the highest number of bicycle accident deaths. As a community, I am sure we can be better. I do hope that we have reached out to Chief Smith and his team, and this fully aligns with their expectation. In closing, and without trying to get into the weeds or on verbiage, I do not see anything in the ordinance where a cyclist should use a bike lane or multi-use trail if one exists. It can be confusing for pedestrians to see cyclists on sidewalks if a bike lane is adjacent. Unfortunately, we don't have that much within the city, the First Street being the major exception, but might be worth a discussion. However, I defer that to legal and police experts. Thanks again to all.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any other comments submitted to you?
No, sir.
Thank you. Jacob, did you get any calls in the queue or anything?
I did not.
Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and request a motion to adopt the ordinance as read by title.
I move that we adopt ordinance number 2020-8139 to make amendments to section 31-5 of the City Code of Ordinances to change the title, to remove the prohibition of riding bicycles on sidewalks, adding multiple subsections that authorize, regulate, or prohibit use of certain other devices on sidewalks to conform to Florida statute regulations.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, and we're open for debate on the floor, starting with Ms. Golding.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to thank Chris Ambrosio because I know he and his staff put some work into this to get it done so quickly. And so I definitely really appreciate this. So this is something that's that I see a lot of because I live really close to San Pablo Elementary School, Fletcher Middle School, and Fletcher High School. And I see a lot of kids that use the sidewalks along Penman Road and through my neighborhood just to get safely to school. And I certainly think that that's the proper thing to do as long as they're doing it safely and they're yielding to pedestrians. So I fully support this. I just wanted to ask one thing I wanted to ask Chris to clarify, because I believe Mr. Marsh's concern with regard to the bike lanes is probably addressed by the reference in the ordinance to section 316.2065. Can you speak to that, Chris?
Sure. That section J of the proposed ordinance, it essentially is the city of Jacksonville Beach explaining in its local law that bicycle operators and riders are to comply with the Florida statute bicycle regulations. And rather than redrafting all of the Florida statute bicycle regulations, this is essentially just referring a bicycle rider and operator to the regulations that all of us are subject to in operating a bicycle. So it's essentially a way of saying we are incorporating the Florida statute bicycle regulations as part of our local law. With respect to operating in a designated bike lane, we don't cover that, and we don't have that necessarily designated as that. And I know Mr. Marsh is an avid bike rider, as I am, but it doesn't necessarily require that. If a bike rider operates their bike on a sidewalk, as the Florida statutes allow them to, and as our proposed ordinance would allow them to, the onus is on the bicycle rider to follow the regulations to ensure the safety of pedestrians on the sidewalk. So the way that the laws are drafted is essentially bicyclists and pedestrians can share the sidewalks. It's absolutely lawful. The safety aspect of it is for the bicycle operator to warn, to alert pedestrians, to make way for pedestrians. The responsibility is on the bicycle rider with respect to operation on sidewalk. So I agree with Mr. Marsh. I can't think of another area where there isn't actually a bicycle lane, but they're not necessarily required to use the bicycle lane if there is a safe sidewalk available. So I don't have that addressed in our proposed ordinance because I didn't want to get into the weeds too much. Essentially, what we're doing through this proposed ordinance is rectifying some of the conflicts that we had with Florida statutes in terms of the permissible areas where bicyclists can be used, and also designating certain devices that absolutely cannot be used on our sidewalk. That's the intention of our local code. The rest is bicycle operators have to follow Florida statutes, and we're not necessarily speaking to the Florida statutes in this.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Sandy. Ms. Dumont?
Thank you. Chris, could you please clarify some of the wording pursuant to section 316 and there are a couple different ones, the distinction between an electric personal assistive mobility device and the micro mobility device, because in 316.2128 subsection 1, it says that it empowers a local government to adopt an ordinance governing the operation of micromobility devices and motorized scooters in section Florida statutes on streets, highways, sidewalks, and sidewalk areas. I'm asking because of the gate.
Sure.
So if you could provide clarification, that would be very much appreciated.
I will. And right before I get to that, let me just point out that there are 3 very basic Scrivener's errors in the proposed ordinance that's before the council tonight. They are in F, L, and M, and those do not affect this substantively. So upon if this advances to second reading, I will correct these very simple Scrivener's errors. With respect to the Florida statute definition. So this proposed ordinance designates use of bicycles on sidewalks. And it also prohibits certain devices from being used. Those devices are defined by Florida statutes, and the Florida statutes also empower you, the municipal elected body, to govern which devices may be used on sidewalks. And that's what you would be doing by this proposed ordinance. So motorized scooters and micro mobility devices are devices that are operated, and I'll provide you the exact definition, but the key component is that these are motorized engine propelled devices, very similar to a low speed vehicle, for example, that is a motorized engine propelled device. So the definition of a micromobility device is any motorized transportation device made available for private use by reservation through an online application, website, or software from point-to-point trips, and which is not capable of traveling at a speed greater than 20 miles per hour on level ground. And that micromobility device definition also includes motorized scooters and bicycles. But motorized scooters has a definition as follows: any vehicle or micromobility device that is powered by a motor with or without a seat or a saddle for the use of a rider, which is designed to travel on not more than 3 wheels, and which is not capable of propelling the vehicle at a speed greater than 20 miles per hour. So a motorized scooter and a micromobility device are motorized devices that may potentially operate at 20 miles per hour. And the Florida statutes allows the body, the council, to prohibit their use on sidewalks. And again, I remind you that the principal reasons for redrafting this was based on council's instruction, information we received, and comments we received from the public, concerns that the public and council had about bicycle safety, encountering vehicles on roadways. Also a few reports generally at that time, 4 or 5 months ago, of the unfortunate events of bicyclists being hit by motor vehicles while they were riding on the roadway. So my goal in drafting the ordinance the way we did is to try to eliminate the conflict between bicyclists, pedestrians, and motorized vehicles. So similar to how the Florida statutes prohibit low-speed vehicles and mini trucks, and if you remember during the Lakeside Drive Gate discussions and briefings, I explained to the council that there is a statute specifically designed on low-speed vehicles and mini trucks, and it's a carved-out statute. Those are fast vehicles that have licensing requirements and almost all of the same equipment requirements as a car that any one of us would drive. Same requirements imposed on those. And there's a reason why those aren't allowed to be on sidewalks, because they travel at high speed, they're motorized, they cause a danger to pedestrians. So just as low speed vehicles and mini trucks are not allowed to operate on sidewalks, the council has the discretion to determine whether they want these smaller types of devices, motorized scooters and micromobility devices, whether they want those to be sharing the sidewalk with pedestrians and bicyclists or not. And the way that I crafted it is that those are prohibited from the sidewalks. So those are the definitions of those two. The other unusual or unique term that's in there, Councilor Dumont, is electronic personal assistive mobility device. And that has its own statutory definition as well. An electric personal assistive mobility device is any self-balancing 2 non-tandem wheeled device designed to transport only one person with electric propulsion with an average power of 750 watts, which is 1 horsepower, the maximum speed of which on a paved level surface, when powered solely by that electric propulsion system, ridden by only the operator who weighs 170 pounds, is less than 20 miles per hour. It's a convoluted definition, but it concludes with the definition of saying electric personal assistive mobility device is not a vehicle as defined by the bicycle regulation. So that is a very different type of device when compared to the micromobility device and the motorized scooter. So I've proposed in our new ordinance that bicyclists and these electronic mobility device, which is designed for only one person, it's a 2-wheeled device, and you probably have seen them, that they are electric bikes. And some people are now buying electric bikes. So essentially what I've drafted is a bicycle, either human powered or electric powered, is now allowed to be on sidewalks. And that's consistent with Florida statute law. The prohibition on micromobility devices and motorized scooters, that's for the board's discretion to prohibit those from being on the sidewalks. And we have extensively covered why low-speed vehicles and mini trucks are not allowed on sidewalks. So these are very distinct, all distinctive, but that was my reasoning behind it, separating the two as a proposed first draft for first reading to the council. Oh, I'm sorry, and let me add that I've run this all through GP, of course, our chief of police. And so he so far is comfortable with this, and that was part of the groundwork months before the pandemic also.
Great, thank you, Chris.
Okay.
Ms. Golding, are you finished?
Just a quick revisit, Chris, the electric personal assistive mobility device, would a Segway fall into that category, or is that something different?
That's something different because let's see here. No, actually, that is included in that.
Okay.
That is included in that category.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, I have to double check all the list of all the definitions. Yeah.
Any other discussion or debate? Okay, in that case, we're going to close the floor for discussion and close the discussion. And Madam Clerk, can we get a vote on the first reading, please?
Councilmember Nichols,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogelsang,
Yes.
Councilmember Dumont,
Yes.
Councilmember Golding,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman,
Yes.
Mayor Latham.
Yes. And Madam Clerk, would you please read ordinance number 2020-8140, first reading, public hearing by title only, please.
An ordinance to amend section 6-8 sea turtle protection of the city of Jacksonville Beach Code of Ordinances, providing for amendments and revisions to conform to current model lighting ordinance regulations, standards, and guidelines, providing for legislative findings, repeal conflicts, severability, codification, and an effective date.
Okay, this ordinance is before the council for a public hearing and consideration on its first reading. And I'll now open the public hearing on ordinance number 2020-8140. Madam Clerk, starting with you, is there any public comment submitted by any parties?
No, sir.
Okay, Jacob, Communications Manager, are there any calls in the queue?
There are not.
Okay, great. We're going to close the public hearing and request a motion to adopt the ordinance as read by title.
I move that we adopt ordinance number 2020-8140 to make amendments to section 6-8 sea turtle protection of the city code of ordinances to conform to current model lighting ordinance regulations, standards, and guidelines.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Mr. Stefopoulos, do you want to introduce the topic or the ordinance?
Actually, I'll turn this over to the city attorney. the city's initiative of trying to better control and regulation for sea turtle protection. We're still working on the issue of lights along the end zones east of First Street, and the city attorney has taken on phase 2, which was redoing the ordinance itself. With that, I'll turn it over to Chris.
Okay, so the memorandum accompanying the agenda item states that I looked at several authorities and sources and to help draft this. And I want to thank Councilwoman Golding for also connecting me to other experts in the field, other authorities, getting additional expert comments given to us for free, and input and insight and resources. So when I originally thought, I researched a lot and I compiled a lot of work in drafting what was the first draft of this ordinance. Now I can confidently say I've really done a lot of research. So I did a whole second level, and I thank Councilwoman Golding for connecting me to a lot of useful, helpful experts. I also met with, many extensive conversations with Bill Mann, George Knight, our supervisor of the building code department, who has, some of us may not have known this weeks ago, but George has extensive experience dealing with sea turtle lighting protection ordinances for many, many years in his previous positions with municipalities at the Panhandle. And some of those jurisdictions on the Panhandle shore coastline there were actually identified as the busy or the most active with respect to sea turtle nesting. And George had lots of experience on the ground dealing with construction and lighting and development with respect to how it all relates to the ordinances and having them in place and actually enforcing them. So George turned out to be an unexpected resource with lots of knowledge. Beaches Energy personnel contributed a great deal. And then of course, Jason from our Parks and Recs contributed as well with respect to what he's going to be able to do in terms of enforcement on the shoreline and further into the city. So this proposed ordinance is essentially a massive reworking of what we originally had. And it starts off with a section of definitions that our original ordinance just did not address, and it didn't cover, and terms, essential terms to this type of ordinance that we didn't have. Again, I got the definitions and terms straight from all of the different authorities, such as the Florida Wildlife Conservation Commission, also the Department of Environmental Protection. And I had several people read this and agree with the definitions that we had. Other massive major changes were, I addressed lighting standards for new construction and development, also existing construction and development, and really covered in detail the types of FWC authorized or permitted lighting and lighting equipment and fixtures that are essentially suggested and recommended as being the ideal for a municipal ordinance. I also added a extensive area on vehicle parking lots, pool decks that we didn't cover at all. And, you know, of course, everyone knows the way that our beachfront is situated with respect to some of our hotels and, you know, large number of our condo complexes. The parking lots and the pools and pool decks are right adjacent to the dune area. So that previously wasn't addressed at all. Now this is addressed and conforming to the most current and up-to-date recommended ordinances from those different entities. And then I added, again, with the help and assistance of some of our other departments, I added a stronger enforcement policy and penalties for violation and other remedies that we can engage in. Councilwoman Golding might have a couple of questions about some of these or want me to address other items on that, and I'll be glad to. However, I think at this point, and I'm surprised that we haven't heard from some of our sea turtle protection advocates, either submissions online or being online now. But that gives me hope that they're satisfied with it, because if they were dissatisfied, then I'm sure we would hear from them. And I haven't heard from them. And a couple of the advocates actually did call me personally and say that they're happy that this is taking place and moving forward with the council's consideration. I'd be glad to address any specific questions on this, but I'll point out that there are a few, again, I apologize, but there are some Scrivener's errors that I will correct if council chooses to move this towards second reading. And just to point them out quickly, there's just one occasion on page 6 where I need to put the term frontal dune in one of the sections. I mistakenly left that out. On page 6 and 7, I'm sorry, 6 and 9, I believe it is. Yes, I still use 45% for tint, and that should be 15%, which I will change that. And again, I'll leave an item or two up to Councilor Golding if she wants me to talk about that further for enforcement. But then I'd also just like to add that I have several YouTube videos that are really beneficial for the public to view and for the council to view, and I'll email them to the council in one email. But it provides a really brief, between 8 and 15-minute videos of what it is that we're doing here, the biology of the sea turtles, what great examples and photographs of what we're aiming to accomplish here. Really beneficial educational videos to sort of put it into a picture for the citizens and for the council to see. I'd be glad to answer any questions about this ordinance.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mott?
Thank you. Chris, thank you very much for making sure that you included the pool deck, because we have 2 hotels where the pool will be on the 2nd floor, so it'd actually be over the dunes. And so I'm glad we're addressing this now. I'm not sure how that's going to impact the hotels and their pools and the lighting of their pools from May to October. Section D, 1 and 2 are already illegal to do. Driving on the beach and building campfires or bonfires. You can have a fire if you're using it to cook food, but you can't just have a fire for the fire's sake. I'm just not sure why that was included in there. I understand the flashlights and illuminated lanterns. But yeah, I just want to say thank you for making sure you included that pool deck. I did have another question with regard to existing structures. How often do they get fined or cited, or how many of them already, with this ordinance as it is, how many will be out of compliance that have to bring themselves up to compliance? I believe it was 6 months, within 6 months. So I'm trying to think of the cost to the homeowners and businesses.
Right, great question. And I do not know the statistics on that. I don't have the answer to that, but I can get that from our departments. Okay. And I can send that to council to inform all of council with the answer to those questions.
I would have ridden my bike on the beach last night, but it was not allowed last night. I could do it tonight, but I'm here with you all. So I still can't go out on the beach to check out the lights. Not that I can know these lumens and such, but just to get a better sense of it. But thank you. If you can get us that information, that would be very helpful. Thank you.
I will. And the videos that I'm going to send out to council, those show great pictures of examples of what Jacksonville Beach may eventually look like during sea turtle nesting season. One issue with respect to the pools, I'm glad, Councilor Dumont, that you're glad that's in there. There might be question or debate or some curiosities about why can pool lights and pool decks not be completely darkened at night during turtle nesting season. And I haven't done a deep dive into this, but I got to say that I think that the city of Jacksonville shouldn't put a law in place that would essentially turn those pool areas, the pool itself, the pool areas and the decks into a completely dark area. A lot of our elderly citizens live in our towers. It would create a very dangerous situation for them if the city were to require for those large pool decks and the pool itself to be completely black and not have any illumination whatsoever or lighting whatsoever, to at least make for a safe walkway, or at least for a safe lit area for a person to walk. And so I don't want to encourage those, you know, businesses, or I should say those hotels or, you know, towers that have those pools that are on beach side. I wouldn't suggest that the city of Jacksonville Beach is enacting a law that's requiring them to make that absolutely dark all night long during turtle nesting season. That's not the intention. That isn't what I would recommend to council. And we don't have it set up that way where we create a completely darkened pool area that would quite frankly be unsafe for people to walk around at night.
But the way it's written, they'd still be able to operate those pools. I'm not saying that they have to be completely dark, but there'd be enough light for them to be operating in a safe and efficient manner in a way that also doesn't attract the turtles, so the people aren't swimming with the turtles.
Absolutely, that's right. Yeah, I just don't want the anybody that later looks back on the video to think, well, the city of Jacksonville Beach is requiring me to make that whole pool area dark, and that's the reason why our resident misstepped and fell into our pool in the middle of the night, and you know, something bad happened. So yeah, I think it's drafted okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Golding?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Chris, for another very in-depth piece of ordinance that you did, piece of legislation that you did. And I will say that I saw there are several videos that I think Chris is going to share that the Sea Turtle Conservancy did, and they were really good. So I hope everybody will watch those. They definitely were enlightening, so to speak. Pardon the pun, but I mean, it really does help you to understand what we're trying to do here. I also spent some time looking at the Florida Administrative Code that has model legislation for sea turtle lighting. And there's a few things in there that I just wanted to ask about, Chris, maybe you can answer, because it does provide local governments with some guidance on management goals that we should consider. One of them is with regard to public awareness. And so just would like to try to understand what will we be doing if this ordinance is passed to notify all the property owners of the new ordinance. And then one of the other part, I have several questions actually, but along the same lines with this, with the management goals, they also talk about enforcement and developing a process to do one compliance inspection prior to the start of the sea turtle nesting season, and then do another compliance inspection during the sea turtle nesting season. So I'm just wondering if you can speak to what the city's going to do with regard to those things. And then I don't know, do you want me to just go through my questions real quick and then?
Sure.
Okay. To Ms. Dumont's point about bonfires, that was something that I talked to Chris about as well, because we currently don't have anything in our code that doesn't allow bonfires. And so my concern was that in putting this in here and saying that you can't have a bonfire during sea turtle nesting season, does that then make people think that they can when it's not sea turtle nesting season? And so I want Chris to speak to that as well. And then And let's see. Oh, and like Ms. Demond, I in looking at the administrative code, we are going above and beyond what the Florida Administrative Code Model Ordinance recommends when we are doing what we're doing with the parking lots and with the pools, because that's something that that ordinance doesn't even speak to. And I really do appreciate the fact that you did incorporate the pool issues in there, because we did have sea turtle hatchling disorientation last year, and we had a lot of baby sea turtles end up in a pool at a condo in Jacks Beach up on my end of the beach. So hopefully if we can get compliance with this new legislation, we won't have that issue happen again. And then I think the only other question I had, which is along the lines of the enforcement piece, is Atlantic Beach does mention in their code that they will not issue a permit for a certificate of occupancy if the property is in violation of the code, and they won't do it unless the permit includes corrective actions. So I just wanted to bring that up for you to speak to that as well. If doing a stop order is sufficient versus doing, restricting the certificate of occupancy, like before the property gets their certificate of occupancy, which is, or do we look at doing something like a combination of both, or options, or whatever? So
Right.
Those are all my questions.
Sure. So let me start with that, and I'll go backwards. So the in meeting with Bill and George Knight, it appeared that they feel comfortable that we're most likely going to get compliance during a couple of stages well before a CO. That is during the application process where they submit plans and the plans show compliance or conformity. Just after that phase of submitting an application, seeking a permit, George and his department would be able to work with the builder or the contractor to get compliance to, and if they didn't submit that with part of their plans, that's really early in the front end. George seemed very confident that they can utilize stop work orders to gain compliance. Then there was an experience of delaying or not issuing a certificate of occupancy based on an alleged violation of the Sea Turtle Lighting Protection Ordinance. And if I recall correctly, it resulted in very expensive challenges on the few occasions where that happened in George's experience. I think he gave me an example of, there was a substantial multi-million-dollar project that was being worked on, and they didn't address it. They didn't address the compliance issue beforehand, but up until the point right before CO, that's when they started to address it. And that particular city, I think, withheld the CO, and withholding that led to litigation and a lot of challenges. So of course, the council, we can include it in our enforcement provision, and I can simply write that in. I can write that in if council would like that, to essentially say that the city may also issue a stop work order, or may elect to not issue certificate of occupancy on any construction or development found to be in violation of any of the provisions of this ordinance. I mean, that's a very simple correction that I can make if council wants me to make that. But I would say that the way that it was relayed to me, that our staff in that field felt that that wasn't necessary, and that the sentence, the way that it is currently drafted, is what the department seems most comfortable with, the way it's currently drafted.
So if they were to work with them through the stop work order to try to get compliance, but they weren't able to gain compliance, I guess my only concern would be that we would still need the CO the opportunity to like withhold the CO in order to gain the compliance?
Well, I think that the stop work order process, and if a contractor were to violate a stop work order, then that's a very strong step for us. I don't think we would ever need to get to the CO, because then we would commence the stop work order violation processes. So they'd be in violation of our ordinance, they'd be in violation of our stop work order, and that's a very substantial dispute, an argument right there before we even ever get to a CO. So I think the message that I received from our department was that the problems will be resolved in the stop work order phase.
Okay.
And
Okay.
they'll be handled then.
And yeah, and I can be satisfied with that based on your explanation. I think that as long as the staff feels that there's a way to deal with it and not have to put down the hammer at the end, you know, like to draw the line in the sand at that point. But
right.
Okay.
And keep in mind that if we do encounter an issue where we weren't able to handle it, if we get to an extreme enforcement situation like this, and we feel that somebody developer or contractor violated it, challenged us on our stop work order, we had a real problem with them, and we wish we had the CO language in there, I'll come right back to council with a simple one sentence, and then if council directs, it'll go in there. So we can always amend this, you know, anytime, anytime council directs. So with respect to a public awareness, so Beaches Energy, I checked with Alan and the guys at Beaches, and they are still doing that awareness campaign. I think it's called Safe, Flat, and Dark. So they're going to begin that process. They've begun the process, but they're stirring that back up again. Alan informed me that it's up and running. That's a campaign that they intend on doing. Through our building planning department and our building and permitting department, we're going to be informing all of the applicants and as many builders as we can, not only here at the building, and when they submit paperwork and applications, they're going to be provided with copies of our ordinance, but also that the building and the code department, we can distribute those to contractors and to construction and development projects that are going on. And then also, of course, we can post it and provide it through all of our various mediums that we have available. And Mike may have other ideas and suggestions on how to also publicize this and bring this to the public's awareness. But those are some of the areas that I discussed with staff and the various departments. And like I said, Mike or Karen might come up with additional great ideas. And then, and what was the first question? I'm sorry. I have notes on Councilwoman Dumont. I'm gonna answer her questions later when I get a chance to review with staff to get some data for her. But what was your first?
So there were two others. There was another compliance one about a compliance inspection prior to the start of sea turtle nesting season,
right.
and then a compliance inspection during the sea turtle nesting season.
Right.
And then the other one was about the bonfires.
Yes, bonfires. So let me cover bonfires. We've begun work on an entirely brand new chapter 20, which is Parks and Rec Department chapter. And I've started to stir that up, but I haven't come to council yet in form of a briefing or anything like that to ask for your permission to, again, draft an entirely new chapter for our code. But we have a chapter 20 designated in our code of ordinances for Park and Rec Department, but there's absolutely nothing in chapter 20. So as you know, beaches, of course, falls under Parks and Rec and Jason's department. So part of the chapter 20 is going to address these things that Councilwoman Dumont pointed out, such as the driving on the beach and the fires and fire pits and campfires, as part of the beach section under a new Parks and Rec beach chapter of our code of ordinances. So what we'd like to do is, if council approves this sea turtle lighting protection ordinance, it gets those prohibitions in place during sea turtle hatching nesting season. And then by the time that season's over, I will have to the council our brand new sparkly chapter 20 for parks, recs, and beaches. And it'll include all of the areas such as the fire pits, the driving, and the restrictions on the beach. So there's going to be an overlap where that will then come to the council, and we'll have everything in place in terms of the regulations for the beach during nesting season and the non-nesting season. So that's my plan. Okay.
Okay.
And then the other one, compliance. Okay. So post and pre. Honestly, I haven't worked on that with any of the departments. We were just trying to get through some of this earlier stuff, and we haven't set up a strategy yet for pre or post analysis of compliance. We haven't worked on that plan yet, and that's coming.
Okay.
And again, I got to say that COVID set aside a lot of our plans on some of these things. So that's kind of one of those that got pushed to the back, and we took the other 80% of the work associated with this and kept working on it. So no, we haven't gotten to that yet, but we will.
Thank you. That's all my questions. Thank you very much, Chris. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you. And thank you for your help. And I want to thank all the other staff members, Elise and everybody else that I mentioned earlier. Everybody contributed to this and put in, made a lot of good, helpful comments. It was a real team effort. So thanks to the other city employees.
I would venture to say, I think we'll have a very model ordinance when we're done with this. Would you agree?
I think so. I mean, there's been 15 brains put on this, so I hope we have the brain power to make it right. Yeah, I need to make a few corrections, and we'll see, if it passes second reading and council adopts it, we'll see this in working form. If there's something lacking, we'll come back in and we'll fix it. But it's going to take, I think, a couple of nesting seasons for us to have this in place and learn.
Okay, thank you. Ms.
Okay.
Hoffman?
My question was for Ms. Golding, and I know you spoke with several different resources. Has this been run by Kevin Brown and our local Sea Turtle folks, and do they feel good about it? Okay, great.
Yeah, Beaches Sea Turtle Patrol looked at it, and they shared it with the FWC, and we were able to get some really good feedback from FWC.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Ms. Hoffman, we got the motion already, right? Did we? I got it marked off and then a squiggle line next to it, so I'm not sure. It's been so long.
I know, I apologize. Yeah, there was a motion, Mayor.
Okay.
You did, yes.
Motion and a second. We've had our discussion. Anybody else? Last chance. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Vogelsang,
Yes.
Councilmember Demott,
Yes.
Councilmember Golding,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman,
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols,
Yes.
Mayor Latham.
Yes, and Madam Clerk, could we please read ordinance number 2020-8141, first reading, public hearing by title only, please.
An ordinance of the city of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, submitting to the electors of Jacksonville Beach proposed amendments to the charter of the city of Jacksonville Beach, providing ballot titles, summary, and text for the proposed amendments, providing directions to the city clerk, providing for severability, providing for an effective date, providing amendments, providing for an effective date for the ordinance.
Okay, this ordinance is before the council for a public hearing and consideration on its first reading. I'll now open the public hearing to ordinance number 2020-8141. Madam Clerk, were there any public comments submitted from any parties?
No, sir, there were none.
Okay, thank you very much. Communications manager, any phone calls on queue? Jacob, do we have any phone calls in queue?
There were none, sorry.
Okay. In that case, we'll close public hearing and seek a motion to adopt the ordinance as read by title, please.
I move that we adopt ordinance number 2020-8141, making amendments to the city charter to create the requirements and procedures for removal of the city manager and city attorney, and the requirements and procedures for the elimination of city departments and standards for council and appointees to not interfere with the performance of city employee duties, appointments, or removals, and provide enforcement provisions.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Stefopoulos, do you want to take the lead or you want me to pass it on to Mr. D'Ambrosio?
The only thing that I would like to add with regard to this is that we did discuss this at a previous council briefing. As indicated at that time, the only provision of the ordinance that council had some questions was with regards to the first item, the number of votes required for removal of the city manager or the city attorney. We went ahead and put it in as we were originally directed when this item was in front of council several months ago, establishing it as a priority, which was 4-5. I would like to point out that we did confirm with the supervisor of elections earlier today that their deadline for getting amendments into the November election is currently June 1st. If we are going to make any substantive changes to this, now would be the time to do so. So that way we could proceed with first reading tonight, second reading at the next meeting, and make that deadline. In the event that we miss that deadline, it's not too big of an issue. It just means that if we wanted to proceed forward, we would have to hold a special election. And that means that we would have to pay for it out of our own funds. I don't know if Ms. Scott wants to add anything with regards to that of the election, but if not, I'll turn it over to the city attorney if there's anything he wanted to touch on.
Chris, you got the floor. Did you have anything?
Sure. So Lori, you don't want to say anything? Add anything? Okay. So just to add, I drafted the ordinance with the 4 sections that I was under the impression that I was instructed as a whole. And then I offered to provide the council with research and with respect to the city manager and the city attorney. And what we did was I looked at 25 local governments, and I've pulled their codes with respect to the removal or termination provisions and of a city manager or a city attorney. And these are governments that are equivalent to ours, which is a council manager form of government with an in-house city attorney. And I also pulled a couple of examples that aren't exactly our form of government, where the city attorney is not a charter employee, rather they have a contract attorney. But just to get a feel for a variety of these, but the great majority are governments just like ours. And I conferred with our municipal law expert, Cliff Shepard, who of course helped draft this, and he's working for us on charter phase 1. And if we proceed with phase 2. He also consults our CRA and Bill Mann. He's been a legal advisor and expert for dozens of municipalities. He's drafted dozens and dozens of charters. He's worked on charter committees. He understands this in great detail. So he provided me some insight as well with his decades of experience, and he provided me with a little bit of research with respect to counties and an insight onto similar type of governments with counties. So I have an entire file, and I can provide all of those to each council member. It would be essentially I've cut out from the code of ordinances from, again, approximately 25 local governments. And just to summarize briefly, I would say that there's no one predominant method used or standard of either simple majority or majority vote or supermajority vote. There's, of course, elected bodies that have 5 officials. Some, of course, have 7. They will, on some occasion, say 3 of 5. Some occasions say 4 of 7. Other times, codes will read just plainly, the city manager shall serve at the pleasure of the city council. And in reviewing more of the information from these different local governments and speaking with Cliff Shepard, it's typically when you see just that stated in a code with respect to removal or termination, it can go one of two ways. Typically, it means simply a simple majority, which is a very typical method used for enacting laws, repealing laws, same as terminating or separating with the city manager or the city attorney. Or if it's not specifically stated in the code, sometimes the termination procedure or standards are stated in the contract of the charter officer, city manager, city clerk, or city attorney. And those again, if we wanted to dig into the contracts of city managers and city attorneys, then I would have to just do multiple public records requests through, a couple of dozen of these cities out there. However, there are some cities that are very explicit and very plainly state in their code that the city manager or the city attorney may be removed by a vote of the council. And then it doesn't explain if it's a simple majority or a super majority. There are also those that do specifically say may be removed by an affirmative vote of the majority of the council members. That could be, in our case, 4 of 7 or 3 of 5, depending on which city we're looking at. There are some cities that speak just to charter officers as a whole. So the manager, the clerk, and the attorney all fall under the same removal process. And it may say these charter officers serve at the pleasure of the city council. And again, we might have to go into the contracts to see the specific terms, but we could also assume that it's a simple majority vote. There are many examples of some of these cities that just refer to the language of serves at the pleasure of the council. And a lot of the county samples that Cliff and I did together, it says the same thing. So again, those would either most likely be one of two answers. One is it's drafted in the contract of the charter employee or in the charter officer, or it is just simply a simple majority vote, because that's the way that council, of course, conducts business, by a simple majority, 4 of 3 or 3 of 5. So there isn't any one particular predominant way of doing this. A lot of discretion left up to the individual local governments. So that is a summary of what I found. And again, I have all of them in a file. I'd be glad to send them to council members if you'd like. But to give you a sample, Coral Springs, Delray Beach, Fernandina Beach, Fort Myers, Gainesville, Ocala, St. Augustine, Tallahassee, Vero Beach, Weston, Winter Park, and then approximately 7 counties, Fort Lauderdale as well, Neptune Beach. Yeah. Although Atlantic Beach and Neptune Beach don't, of course, have an in-house city attorney, I pulled both of those samples in terms of removal of the city manager. Were there any questions?
Ms. Demott.
Thank you, Chris. So thank you for looking up the deadline to get it on the November ballot. June 1st, kind of close. I really would have preferred to have this information well before. I know it was last week that we asked you to find the information, but I don't have anything to really research what works better. So just because there's no one way or another that's majority of them, we don't know which one is really going to be work best for us. I really wanted to table this until we got that information, but that June 1st deadline is very close, specifically because of the gravity of what it is that we are voting on here. I'm looking at I guess it's your draft composite exhibit 1 ballot title summary proposed amendment for the removal of the city manager. We have debated on council last week, long time ago, whether it should be a supermajority or a majority. And with how it's written here, it may only be removed by a supermajority. But if we were to change the next piece, manager would be, the council would vote on whether they want to put forward the motion, a formal statement in the form of a resolution passed by a majority of the council. So if there are 4 or more council members that have issue with the city manager or the attorney, and so everything I'm saying about the city manager, apply it to the attorney. If a majority of council has an issue, they should, by a majority, it's a simple majority, then they should make that motion the formal statement. And then on the next council meeting, after research has been done and arguments made, a supermajority can then vote to remove the city manager or the city attorney. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, with just having more meat in the city attorney part. So there's no advance notification. If the council is unhappy with something that you're doing, there's no notification saying that the majority of council has an issue with what you're doing, or we're concerned about the work that you're producing. So I think we should also have a simple majority for the city attorney. So it they parallel each other in those ways. I think that alone would deal with a lot of the concern. I know also that we noted it's been brought up in the past. We had a city manager for 23 years and all. And regardless of how you viewed that individual or the councils throughout the years, they had multiple tools at their disposal if they wanted to remove that city manager. They always had the majority vote. And I know that there was, it was difficult to do, but it was not impossible. My concern ends up being putting little p partisan politics, because it's not Democrat or Republican at the local level, is having politics dictate it. So for example, let's reverse what happened with the fire department. Let's say that the information that the city manager provided was more that we shouldn't do it. That we should do it. It kind of led in that way, that those 4 council members who wanted to contract the fire department could then remove the city manager because he's presenting information that they don't agree with. So that's more of a political piece versus a competence. So the reason why I'm asking for the supermajority is so that we are not removing our city manager and our city attorney based off of politics, but off of competence. Does he or she do the job well, and the way that we instruct them to do that? Specifically, are they carrying out what we vote on? Do they implement it properly? They implement it efficiently and effectiveness and all of that. And if not, that is the reason why the individual should be removed, not because I just didn't like how, I didn't like what the information said. So that I'm just trying to remove the politics out of this as much as possible. But definitely we need to add more stuff to the city attorney piece versus just the city manager piece. And I know that you were working off of something that we didn't have when it came to the city manager, because we didn't have our own city manager before. So I appreciate that. But there's that piece. And then just a simple majority of council saying they have concerns, but the supermajority for the removal.
Thank you, Mr. Mott. Mr. Nichols?
I disagree. I mean, I just think we need to leave it as a simple majority. I think we should have a overwhelming reason to make this change if we're going to make it. But my main argument is that if the city manager or city attorney loses the confidence of the simple majority of the council, I don't know how they can do their jobs. I think it would be incredibly difficult, and I don't think they would want to be in their jobs if 4 of the 7, wanted to have them removed. And then if we go through that process and they don't get a super majority, it just doesn't seem. I just don't think it's broken right now. I don't think it's broken, and I don't think there's any reason to change any of it. So I'll be voting to
Sir, Mr. Vogelsang?
keep us 4-3.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Vogelsang?
Thanks, Mayor. to some extent agree with Corey. I think the language is fine. I think there's a significant amount of protections, even with a majority vote. It isn't like, oh, we don't like the decision or how you presented the fire department cell to us, so we're going to go ahead and terminate you. Because we have to, if you read the charter, you got to provide a detailed reason. And this is all a public trial, so to speak, as to why we're getting rid of it, getting rid of that individual. And that individual would have to have 4 people removing him from office. So I think it's already has significant protections built in. I don't think it's necessary to change the charter and put this on the ballot. So I would agree, based on our discussions during the briefing, of removing this altogether, keeping status quo. And then if you have issues that you want to bring up to add to Mr. Ambrosio's contract, I would support amending Mr. Ambrosio's contract to include this language in it, because it is a protection that he should be afforded. I don't think the charter needs to be amended to do that. I do like the idea that he discussed of making it a contractual obligation, which we could add to his employment contract. And we don't need to change our charter and put it on the ballot and really confuse people when we have something that works. So I would make a motion to remove the first portion of composite exhibit 1 dealing with the term of appointment and leaving that as status quo. And then I will, if that can be seconded, and then we can open it up for discussion.
Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second, open for debate.
Mayor, can I just ask for clarification before the council continues to discuss? If was Councilor Vogel saying, was that with respect to both the city manager and the city attorney sections?
So does the charter now have a city attorney protection?
No, it's very, very bare bones. It doesn't provide that. Again, as Councilwoman Dumont pointed out, there was no city attorney, in-house city attorney. So it's a very bare bones section for the city attorney. And you'll see that in section 27, the way it's drafted, 95% of that is the current existing section. I didn't strike through any of that. I mean, hardly anything at all. We just changed that to the super majority. So the city manager section and the city attorney section as currently existing look very, very differently. So when you made your motion, was that with respect to not changing both section 27, and that's the city manager, and then also section 34 city attorney? Just for point of clarification before the council discusses.
Yeah, I would remove all of that, keep it status quo, and then add the language, the protections that our city manager have. I think that we can put that in your employment contract. I don't think it needs to be in the charter.
Understood. Thank you.
Ms. Hoffman?
I just wanted to comment 2 things. One, Ms. Dumont made reference to the tools that we have at our disposal beyond or before removing someone in these positions. And previous councils did not use the tools, at least in recent history. We know that reviews, for example, annual reviews were not done. I think that there are a few steps that would go before removing someone at these positions, and hopefully there would be as many people on the council as possible supporting that. The other thing, when we did the interviews of the city manager candidates, I asked all of them the same question and they all answered it the same way. And that was, what would, in the list of pros and cons, if they were to be offered this position, what would a con be? And every single one of them said that there were 3 seats on the council up for re-election or up for election. They were all going to be new members to the council. So that creates a great deal of insecurity in attracting talent to the city. And I definitely took that to heart when they said that, because that, that could make or break inviting or keeping the talent at these high level positions in our city. So I continue to support the proposal as written.
Anyone else? Okay, we got a motion and a second, and we have discussion. Is there any additional discussion? Ms. Golding?
The only thing I would add too is that what we're talking about here is bringing this to the community to vote on this. And, we may have our own opinions about what we think should be how it should be handled. Ultimately, if the community feels that it needs to be a simple majority, then the community can say they want us to keep it status quo. If the community would like to see it be a supermajority, then the community can vote that way as well. So to a certain extent, I would have to say that I don't want to assume that I know what the community wants. And the only way that we can find that out is by putting it out there to the voters.
The referendum. Okay. Ms. Dumont.
Revisit. I happen to know a lot about city managers and public administration. I have like that PhD thing and I teach the future ones. And this really is a concern if you want somebody who is, as Chris mentioned, if you have more security, you're going to be able to get the best and the brightest when it comes to talent. And that's what we should be attracting here in Jax Beach. You don't want that. There's a term that they say that a lot of public managers or city administrators are like gypsies. They're here and there for a couple of years, and then and when council changes, they're gone. When council changes, they're gone. And that's what happens in Jacksonville. Whenever we have a new mayor, we have a new chief administrative officer, and so there's very little continuity. So we really want to make sure that we are thinking for the long term of Jacksonville Beach. Thank you. I support the as written.
Okay. City Attorney?
Mayor, I'd like to point out that I would suggest that out of all the local governments that I researched, and for all the information that I've ever encountered, there is no referendum vote for removal of the city manager, the city attorney, or the city clerk, and I should say charter officers, because the charter officers are hired by the city council, and we serve at your pleasure. And Councilor Nichols makes a very well taken point. If we've lost the confidence, if it's 4 of the 7 members, then I understand. We serve at your pleasure. And throughout all of the charters that I've reviewed, and again, over my years of experience, you would not, a council would not want to put the decision of its charter officers, because the 3 of us serve at your pleasure. You do not want to subject your charter officers to the referendum. The departments, absolutely, I get it. But you have 3 city employees working for you at your pleasure. And it's your discretion, either as a simple majority or a supermajority. It's your discretion whether to hire us or to terminate us. It's not up to the voters to make a decision on your charter officers. So I just wanted to add that for the council to consider. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
And
Mr. Nichols, a quick
review. My short follow-up is the way our city was set up, we're a very, very attractive city for these positions. And look at the city manager and the city attorney that we were able to get recently. I think they're absolutely outstanding. And I don't have any concern that that's keeping people from us. We received a lower quality because we're not a super majority. And back to the point, if 4 of the 7 of us are not in favor of having a city manager, how does he get work done? I mean, how does anything get done in the city?
Thank you, sir. Chris, were you done, or do you have another comment? Chris Ambrosio.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I'm done. I've got to lower my hand.
Ms. Golding, quick revisit.
I just wanted to follow up just to make sure that, because I don't know if Mr. Ambrosio was responding to what I said, but I wasn't saying that I felt that the removal of those officers should be done by referendum. I was saying that we are giving the community the opportunity to decide if if that removal by us is done with simple majority or supermajority. So that was my only comment, not so much that we would put it before the voters in a referendum. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, ma'am. So I don't see any other hands up at this point. Ms. Golding, you're done, I take it. Ms. Dumont, quick revisit.
I would like to separate this out from one agenda item to 3 separate agenda items, one dealing with the city manager, one dealing with the city attorney, and one dealing with the removal or the contracting out of Beaches Energy and the police. Beaches Energy and police can be together. Instead of having one agenda item, I'd like to see this broken out into 3 separate ones, please.
Okay, let's address the amendment addendum motion that Mr. Vogelsang has on the floor, and then we can address yours. Is there any more discussion? Okay, we're voting on the amendment proposed by Mr. Vogelsang and seconded by Mr. Nichols. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Demott,
No?
There you go.
Councilmember Golding,
No, sorry.
sorry, Councilmember Hoffman,
No.
Councilmember Nichols,
Yes.
Councilmember Vogelsang,
Yes.
Mayor Latham.
No. Okay, so we're back to the original motion. And Ms. Dumont, do you want to pick up your discussion on the original motion?
Yeah, I'm wondering if we want to separate these out. City manager, city attorney, and Beaches Energy. And I'm not going to make a motion because I see the head, I can see the heads nodding no's easier than here than when we're side by side. So I withdraw the motion that I would have made, separate those out. So let's just vote on them all together. Let's have fun. We'll call it a charter revision change party.
Okay. Any other discussions about the original motion? And this is on a first reading. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Golding,
Yes.
Councilmember Hoffman,
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols,
Yep.
Councilmember Vogelsang,
Yes.
Councilmember Demott,
Yes.
Mayor Latham.
Yes. And there's a couple of announcements we need to make before we wrap this up. And I think City Attorney, you're up first.
Yes, sir. Mayor, I'd like to renew my public request for a closed session, private attorney-client session in the case, a lawsuit of SLG Investment Partnership LLP and Clear Channel Outdoor Inc. versus the City of Jacksonville Beach, case number 2018 AP 00121. Pursuant to Florida statute, I'm required to make a public announcement and request to the City Council stating that I desire the advice of counsel concerning this litigation, this litigated matter, and that the subject matter of the meeting shall be confined to settlement negotiations or strategy sessions related to the litigation expenditures in that case. And I had requested a closed session before the pandemic situation. And of course, we have been sidelined with conducting that closed session. However, I'm required to renew my request. And I request at this time for the closed session to be held on June 1st, 2020. And the city will provide and give reasonable notice of the time, the date of the meeting, and the persons who will attend. And the reasonable notice will be provided in advance of the June 1st meeting, closed session meeting. And if we do not have that meeting, then we are entitled to postpone it and carry it on, and I can make the public request again. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Chris. And is that June 1st going to be if we can all meet, or would you do virtual as well, or is that not?
Right, exactly. That's the trouble, is that I would rather not try to have a closed session, which of course requires us to have a certified court reporter present. Also, it requires us to have a public opening and then a closing of that public opening. And then we go into our private confidential closed session. And then we come out of that and go back into public. The logistics of that under a virtual setting, I think, are going to be very difficult. So at this time, I'm requesting June 1st, hoping that we can get back to normal by June 1st. Doesn't look like it's going to be happening. And if not, then I would say, Mayor, no, I would suggest that we do not try to conduct a closed session under the virtual setting.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Or did you have anything else? Okay, Mr. Sefakis.
I just wanted to let the council know that at the end of last week, the contract for the 4th of July fireworks came to my desk, and we are not proceeding with signing off on that agreement at this point in time. Needless to say, I've got a lot of concern with regards to putting on what might be the only fireworks show in Northeast Florida and attracting tens of thousands of people into Jax Beach, especially at a time when we are still looking at social distancing. We've only crossed the first hurdle of 25% for restaurants and retails, and we still have some establishments that are closed. We did check with the firework company. We have until the end of May to make a decision as to whether or not we want to proceed forward, and we would still be able to pull it off for the July 4th event. So it's something I want you all to keep on your radar as we go through next week's briefing and then the following week's council meeting. I may share my thoughts with you and ask for your input on this as well. While I recognize it's an administrative decision, this is a large community function. My understanding is several years ago was the first time in years that the city did not have a 4th of July event, and there was a lot of community pushback. So I just want you to keep it on your radar, and we'll talk about this again in the next 1 or 2 weeks once we get a little bit more information and see how we're progressing as both a state and as a county.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, the meeting's adjourned. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thank you.
See you guys.